everyone, my name is Rhiannon from Blue Dog Board Games, and today we're going to be doing something a little bit different. We're going to be doing our first top 5 list. We're going to be focusing on the top 5 games that I personally feel are very good for playing with families in festive periods and other times of getting together. Christmas is coming, and so I wanted to give you my top games that I would recommend that you can purchase as gifts or bring round to family or friend get-togethers, and they will most likely be a hit with hopefully all, if not most, people there. These are not necessarily Christmas-themed games. These are games that are just very friendly in terms of audiences, very easy to learn, and have a very reasonable playtime. So without further ado, we're going to get into the very first game on our list. The first game on my list is called No Thanks. This is a game that I'd heard about for a long time. I didn't really know much about it because it's generally put into the party game category, and I'm not really a party game person, but my husband heard about it on a podcast and was quite intrigued by how it sounded and how it played and thought it could be a fun one to play with family and friends, and so we did pick up a copy. This one, I must admit, is first on my list because this is the game that I want to play with people. If they are new to games, if they are just looking for a lightweight game to play, it is an absolutely phenomenal good time and with very minimal rules and components involved. This game plays between 3 to 7 players, so it's very flexible in terms of player count, and it's also basically completely themeless, so people can't really sort of say, oh, they're not really interested in that sort of game. It's just a numbers and pushing your luck sort of game, so there's nothing to love or not love about the theme here. In No Thanks, you have a deck of cards which I believe have values between, I think it's 3 and 35, it may be 5 and 35, but basically you've got a deck of these cards, ranging with all numbers in between. You remove some of these cards from the game, so you never know for certain what cards are going to be available in your particular game. The aim is to score as little points as possible, and on your turn, a card is going to be revealed, and you have the option of whether you take that card in front of you and score those points, or whether you pop a little token on it, and I call them minstrels because they look like the minstrel chocolates, and say, no thanks, I don't want that card, and play continues around the table. Everyone can either take that card or also put a little minstrel token on it and say no thanks, and it continues round and round and round in circles until somebody takes that card. Whoever takes that card also gains all of those tokens on that card as well, so that's like a really good thing because that gives you extra power in the game to say no thanks to higher value cards as the game goes on. The clever thing in this game as well is that you can score from consecutive cards. So what I mean by that is if you have, say, number 15 and you've taken number 16 and 17, only number 15 is going to be counting towards your point value. So the idea is to sort of collect sequential cards, but for as low as values as possible. This creates a very interesting game because you're always looking at lots of different things. You're concerned about what cards you're taking. You're also trying to take your sequential cards, but you're also perhaps trying to work out what other players are going to be going for, and they're going to be the same doing this to you, and trying to bluff your way around it a little bit or push your luck to try and get more counters, because every counter you have at the end of the game is going to be worth -1 point, so offsetting any point values that you are gaining in the game. It is a brilliant push your luck and fast-paced party type game that's really sure to get most people involved and having a really, really good time. I think this one is particularly suitable for playing with families because the rule set is so light here. There is not a lot going on other than either taking the card or saying no thanks. And as long as you can grasp that concept, you're going to be well away with it. There's also no particular theme, so there's going to be no sort of swaying either way that somebody's not really interested in it or wants to play a game with a particular theme. It's very neutral in that regard. And in particular, I think this one is very good for all sorts of players, young and old and experienced and inexperienced. And what I mean by that is there is certainly some strategy in No Thanks, and you can get good at it, but there's always going to be an element of luck. And what I've found is when you are playing with people that are a lot less experienced with games, they act so unpredictably that can really, really mess up your personal strategy in your game, and it really affects what you're doing. And so I think it's just a great one to play when you've got a bunch of people and you don't know what they're going to do, because it levels out the playing field a lot more and just creates a very interesting game, rather than everyone sort of knowing exactly the right strategy to do and hoping to get the lowest score possible in that regard. It just sort of elevates this to a very approachable experience. Just looking online, this one does retail between about £12 and £15, and this one is in stock on various stores online in the UK at the present time. So that is No Thanks. That is my number one pick. I should have done it backwards really, but this is my number one pick for games to play with family. I've played it with a good number of people now, and it has gone down well every single time, and that's with all ages as well, really. So brilliant, perfect game for the party season or festive season. The next game on my list is my roll and write or flip and write entry. I naturally feel like flip and writes and roll and writes are going to be very suitable for a list such as this, just because they tend to be, on average, lighter experiences. They're very tactile, they're quite aesthetically pleasing to play, and so I think it does just naturally appeal to a wide variety of people. But my particular entry on this category is Welcome to Your Perfect Home. This one plays from any player account whatsoever, so as long as you've got enough pens, pencils and sheets of paper, or you can even get some dry wipe ones as well, anywhere from solo play all the way up to however many people you can fit around the table. So for a perspective of like a get-together when you just don't know how many people will be there in the first place or interested in playing a game, this one is just super flexible as well. Welcome to is a game where you are trying to build up your little suburb and score the most points possible. You have 3 rows of houses and you need to be inputting numbers into these to try and get consecutive numbers, and also build pools, create like forests or parks, and just try and get these like areas like sectioned off as quick as possible so you can score the objective cards that are also present. In this game you do have a deck of cards that are like double-sided. On one side you have a symbol and the other side you have a number. What happens is you split this into 3, and so you have a column of 3, and then you flip over the first card of each of these 3 piles. Everyone then has a chance of choosing one of these sections of 3, and this will show both the number and the symbol according to whether you're looking at the front or the back of each pair of cards. The symbol represents what action you're going to be doing on your turn, and that may be something like building a pool in the particular house that you are putting the number in for, building a park in that particular suburb area, or duplicating a house number along these sorts of lines. And the number is the house number that you are entering into your little row of houses. Each turn is really, really quick, and you're also doing everything simultaneously, so you're never waiting around from anyone. This one I feel is particularly suitable for a wide range of people. I think it's very easy to sort of understand the rules. There are a few different things going on in terms of all the symbology and all the actions you can do, but the player aids in this game are actually quite smooth and well done. So if you give everyone that's a bit unsure about the game one of these, hopefully that will clear up issues. But also, as you're doing everything simultaneously, you can sort of explain what each of the options are as you go along, and hopefully that's not going to be holding anyone up particularly. In this game as well, you do have objective cards that you can score, so you've got 3 out at a time, and the first person to achieve that one scores the highest number of victory points, and you flip the card, and then the second person that scores it next can score the second best victory points, and then that's it. But what you could do, if you wanted to, and make it really sort of as least competitive as possible, if you're playing with like younger children perhaps, you could take those out of the game, I guess, and try and just do it as a more friendly, approachable, who can score the most experience in just flipping all the cards. Aesthetically, I think this game can be very, very approachable as well. I think it sort of sits in a category of, I think it's 1950s America that it's sort of stylized around. So it looks very vintage. And so I think that could appeal to slightly like the people that are like that slightly in the older era where they are looking at all of these sort of houses, and that's the sort of aesthetic that they grew up with. Everything is very much themed around that, and it just looks fabulous on the table. If not, and you're a little bit younger, then definitely it has a very retro feel and it just feels very cool. In addition, if you were interested in that sort of game, they do actually have like expansions and standalone games that are very different themes. So they have a Christmas, like winter wonderland type theme, they have Halloween, and they have Easter. So if this did become like a staple in your family, you could sort of get one of those to be tailored around the holiday that you're all meeting for. This one also has a fantastic playtime as well. This one is like a good 30 minutes or so just a good amount of time to sort of like get your teeth into, but it isn't over and done with in 5 minutes. So overall, I think Welcome to Your Perfect Home is one of the best roll and writes for a family-based environment. It can appeal to a wide variety of people, and also is just very approachable in terms of player count and flexibility in that regard. I have checked online as well for this one, and this one is available in stock in the UK at the moment for between £20 and £30, and that is just Welcome to Your Perfect Home, like the big base game box. The next game on my list is my competitive board game entry. Now, I say it's competitive, but I think it's a very light-hearted competitive game, so hopefully there won't be too many tears with this one. This one is Lost Cities, the board game. Now, if you were looking for this one, do be careful that there are a couple of different versions. So I believe there is a roll and write version as well, but there is also Lost Cities, the card game, and this is a 2-player version. So Lost Cities, the board game, which is the one I'm talking about today, is a board game that plays between 2 to 4 people, but the card game is 2-player only. So just watch out for that one. Lost Cities is a brilliant board game, which is just beautiful on the table. It's so aesthetically pleasing, so it's real eye candy when you just sort of see it on the table, and it's sure to pique people's interest. This one is a really cool mix of like push your luck, and there's not too much luck either, but it's just the right amount in my opinion, and you're trying to sort of set collect different coloured cards and sequences in your tableau. You have various explorers in the middle of this board and different coloured tracks to move down with these explorers. And in the game there is a deck of cards, and these have 5 different colours, and each colour has numbers ranging between 0 and all the way up to 10, I believe, with duplicates in as well. You are trying to play cards in a sequential order, or as sequential as you possibly can, trying to play as many cards in that sequence, because each card you play progresses your explorer 1 space further along that coloured track and scoring you more and more points. So for example, it's really good if you can play 0, 0, 0, 1, 1, 1, 2, 2, 2, because you're going to be scoring or moving along each of those cards that you play, but equally you may only have the cards in your hand, and in the game you may find to only play like a 1, a 5 and a 10, and then you're sort of stuck because there's no cards beyond the 10. You're also, as you progress along these tracks, skipping over some like various spots with like various little bonuses, and also gaining artifacts which score you more points towards the end of the game. In addition, there is a very large explorer meeple as well, and the large one is worth double points. So in the game you have to weigh up whether or not you're going to be gambling and moving that particular large meeple if you've got loads of that colour in your hand, for example. But equally, you don't have to move any of the meeples if you don't want to, so you can leave that large one in the centre for the whole game if you want. This one I think is a really, really fabulous game to play with families. I've played it with both sides of my family, I believe, and it has been a really, really good one both times that I've played. This one is really approachable because I feel like the rule set is very streamlined. There's very minimal things that you are sort of choosing to do on your turn, but because turns are so quick and there is definite tension built in this game, that it's very engaging, and I feel like it's quite an exciting game to play, even though there isn't ultimately a huge amount going on at any one time. Also, I think it's very flexible in terms of play time. So the game is designed that you play 3 games back to back, and then whoever has scored the most at the end of those 3 sessions has won. But ultimately you could just strip it back to the 1 game only. The 1 game I would anticipate would take you between maybe 20 to 30 minutes, whereas playing the full 3 back to back will take you about an hour. So it depends how you want to play and how much time you all have, and that's just a really, really nice thing to have in a board game, so you can really tailor it to your particular group. Again, this one is so beautiful to play as well. All of the components look really good, and it's so colourful on the table. It just looks fabulous. And ultimately this one's just a fabulous mix of mechanisms here. So you've got your real pushing your luck and that risk factor, and it's really sort of ramping up that tension all the time to create a really satisfying and exciting experience. I don't feel like this necessarily sort of lends itself to the most experienced player winning all the time either. I mean, I will say on the most part that we've found that the people that are more experienced with board games have won, but not always. And so I definitely feel like it's a more approachable game there, and it's not necessarily a wipeout or you could just disregard winning if you're not really familiar with board games in general. So I always think that that's quite a nice factor in a game that you play with family and other people that may not be so familiar with the hobby. So Lost Cities is in stock in the UK at the moment. Retails between about £26 to £35, inclusive of delivery. Just make sure you check whether you're picking up the Lost Cities board game or the card game or any other versions out there, because there's just been quite a few released and you just want to make sure that you've got the right one for you. I will say that the card game is designed as 2 players, but you can equally play the board game at 2-player as well. So don't necessarily, if you just knowing you're going to play 2-player almost solely, don't necessarily gravitate just towards the card game. You could consider the board game as well. The next entry onto my list is my cooperative game pick. I naturally, as well as roll and writes, feel like cooperative games are really great to play with families and with newer people to the hobby in general, just because it sort of minimises the hidden information in a game. You're all working together towards a common goal, and so you can help or not help people as much as they may want it or need it, and it just creates for a very seamless experience where you're all trying to contribute towards something together, and it's just a nice feeling when you play. My entry for the cooperative pick is Castle Panic, and that's because this one plays all the way from solo all the way up to 6 players, and so this one in my collection is one that's just a bit more flexible when you consider cooperative gameplay. A lot of them can go up to 4 players, but 6-player is just better for families. So Castle Panic is a tower defense game. You have the 3D components in this are pretty cool, and that's what piqued my interest to begin with. But you have a little 3D castle in the center of the board that you are protecting. The board is also split into like rings and colours, so you have your blue, your green and your red section. Monsters are going to be coming towards your castle, and more are going to be drawn on each turn. So on your turn you're going to be playing cards from your hand, which may be soldiers that are going to hit things in the soldier ring. You're going to be playing like red swordsmen, so in the red section in the swordsman ring you're going to be hitting monsters in there. You can trade cards between players, you can discard cards that are useless to you, and you can build up walls that may have been knocked down by monsters that have already reached your castle. You only win if you manage to defeat all of the monsters that are advancing and maintain all of your castle tower. If at any point the monsters defeat all of your castle tower, you do collectively lose the game. Now there is a semi-cooperative mode in this game as well, where when you defeat a monster you take the token, and whoever collects the most tokens at the end of the game is the ultimate winner, as long as everyone else has won as well and the tower still stands. I have never played that way, never. And I don't think I ever want to play that way. I don't personally particularly like semi-co-op. I don't think it really works very well, and particularly in like a family-friendly celebratory environment like Christmas, you're probably not going to want to play like that either, and there's nothing wrong at all with the full co-op experience in Castle Panic. I think this one is particularly suitable because of the player count. As I said, it goes up to 6 players. This one also is very approachable in how it plays. It's quite light in rule set. There are expansions that are available which are very good, and I've got 2 of them and enjoy both of them very much, but from a core gameplay experience, that's probably what you're going to want to start with if you are playing with other people that are not familiar with the game. This one is a very streamlined experience, and it comes with turn order cards as well, which basically exactly spell out to you what's going on your turn. As everything is completely open source information, you don't have any hidden goals or hidden objectives, so all of it is just completely cooperative. You can help or not hinder, you can help or aid somebody who's struggling, like to the extent that they want or need it. So it's just a very warming experience there too. It's a higher play time, this one. This one does take at least 45 minutes or so, up to an hour to play. So it is a more crunchier game in that regard, but definitely a really good one to stick your teeth into. I will also say that I think the theme of this one is particularly good for like families. There's nothing obscure or abnormal about this theme. It's just a typical fantasy theme where you have a castle and you've got monsters coming out of the forest towards your castle. So I feel like, being a very common theme, this one is just very approachable, very easy to understand. You're going to be able to sort of talk to your grandparents about it and they'll grasp that concept. There's nothing weird and wonderful going on. It's just straight, stripped back fantasy, try and defend your tower. And that's ultimately what's going to just bring everyone together. There's going to be no sort of arguments about theme or anything like that. So I've got the first edition of Castle Panic. The second edition has also been released, and that one is slightly higher on the price spectrum. I have had a look, and the first edition of Castle Panic does retail for between £25 to £40 in the UK at the moment, and is in stock if you wanted to purchase it. So the final game on my list, before I go into a sneaky sixth one on my list, but I'll call it an honourable mention because top 6 doesn't sound as good as top 5. The last game that is on my list today is Micro Macro Crime City, or indeed any of the Micro Macro games. I have spoken about Micro Macro before, but if you didn't know what Micro Macro was, this is a Where's Wally type experience. You have a very large black and white map that you spread out in the middle of the table, and you have a number of cases to solve. For example, it may say something like, Mr. Rabbit has been murdered, can you tell us how it happened, or something along those lines. It's all crime related, and some of the themes is usually murder related, so just be aware of that going in. You then have to find Mr. Rabbit somewhere in this map and find what has happened to him. So there's various, it's like a time lapse sort of, so at various points on the map you can see Mr. Rabbit, and following him along those pathways you can find out what happened to him. So you may have to sort of figure out, where does Mr. Rabbit live, what's Mr. Rabbit been doing that day, who has he been meeting, where is his body, where's the murder weapon, everything like that. And by finding various sections on the map and piecing them all together, you figure out the whole crux of this story and piece it all together to solve that crime. This one can play from anywhere from solo play all the way up to squeezing as many people around the map as you possibly can fit. So in that regard, it's just super flexible. You can have people dipping in and out as you want to. It's a game that you can sort of leave set up somewhere as and when you're cooking dinner or doing something else, and people can just dip in and out as they want to. Each case can take between, say, maybe 5 minutes for the really simple starter ones, all the way up to, say, 25 minutes for the more complicated card ones. This one is very approachable because they can walk you through as little or as much as you need to. Each case comes in a separate envelope, and you are given like the picture of who you are focusing on for that particular scenario, and a question. So it might say, what happened to Mr. Rabbit? And each subsequent card after that is an extra step in that case. So if, like I play, my husband plays, we don't want any help or extra information. We just look at that top card, know who we're focusing on, and trying to piece the entire case together from that small amount of information. And that can sometimes be quite a challenge, especially if you don't know where you're focusing on in the map, and these maps are quite big. Alternatively, if you are playing with younger children or you just need a little bit of extra help in hand, each of the cards does have an extra prompt on it. So it might say, can you find where Mr. Rabbit lives? Do you know what forms of transport Mr. Rabbit has taken today? And just those extra bits of information may help you piece together the story in different ways and ultimately lead you to a conclusion. Also, on the back of all of these cards, it does sort of give you the answer, so you can it tells you the specific point on the map to look at for that particular aspect of the story. So ultimately this is just a really fun cooperative game to play, and it does lead to some good laughs. This one does have some slightly delicate themes, like it is Crime City, so there's crime going on. The first box especially is sort of open and you can't really tell what the themes are going in. I know that the second box, and I'm assuming the ones after that as well, are a bit more sensitive to that and do have warnings on them if you do have young children that you're playing with. I have only played the first and second of these ones, and they're both really brilliant experiences, and I'm assuming that the other boxes are as well. There's also additional content that has been released that I don't know if it's just promotional content or whether there's some extra stuff online, but there's quite a lot of stuff here as well. So there's a lot of content to get through, and definitely will take you through a number of holidays. So overall, Micro Macro is suitable for a very large number of people. For the older generation, if you've got some like harder eyesight problems, some of the details on the map can be quite small and intricate, so they do actually supply a little like magnifying piece of plastic in the first version of the game, which can be quite helpful for some people, but you may want to find a magnifying glass if you were to get involved with some eyesight problems. But other than that, it's a really fun and funny experience to come together and try and solve all of those crimes. So Micro Macro is in stock in the UK at the moment. This is the very first box, Crime City, and it retails between £20 to £30. So again, in the sort of reasonable price point for gifts and just bringing to events. So that is my top 5 games that I wanted to mention to play with families over holidays and festive period. But I do have an additional game that I did want to mention. I've never mentioned this one on the channel before. I wasn't really sure I wanted to kick out any of the other games that I've already mentioned, and so I thought, you know what, I'm going to do a top 6, but we'll just put this one as the honourable mention because top 5 sounds better. This one is called Ghost Blitz, or you may know it as Geist. I don't even know where to start with trying to describe this game. This is a chaotic party game. So you have 5 different wooden objects on the table. You have a ghost, you have a book, you have a bottle, a sofa chair, and a mouse. And they all have colours associated with them. So the ghost is white, the bottle is green, the mouse is grey, etc, etc. You then have a deck of cards, and there's 2 different types of cards that you may see in this deck. The first type of card that you may see is a card that shows you the correct colour of a particular object. So you may be shown a red ghost holding a green bottle, and because the green bottle is the correct colour of the wooden component, you need to be the first person to grab that green bottle. The second type of card that you may find in the deck shows you 2 objects, and they are both of the incorrect colours. So again, it may be a blue ghost holding a red mouse, and you need to grab the object that is not depicted in the pictures. It sounds completely chaotic, and it absolutely is. It's not really the best game to play at 2 players. This one does play between 2 to 8. The only way I played it so far is 2 player, and it was absolute carnage. It was really chaotic at 2 player only. It is definitely fun at 2, but I can imagine that the fun just amplifies at bigger player counts. This one is just completely suitable for those moments where you want a loud, chaotic, crazy party game and gets everyone's spirits really high and pumping. This one I do feel is particularly suitable for all members of the family, just because it can be easily tailored in terms of difficulty. As there are 2 different types of cards in the deck, and one of them is definitely harder than the other to get your brain working around, you can sort of split the deck in 2 and just go for the easier cards if you are playing with younger children or if you just want to warm up. Alternatively, they do offer a hard version as well, which is, I don't even know how to explain it. It's something like you either grab or you shout out the name of the object, depending on whether it's like present or missing or something like that from the cards available. It just sounds like utter chaos, and I don't think my brain could probably cope with that. It just sounds absolutely nuts. And the ultimate aim of the game, I never even mentioned, is to try and collect the most number of cards. So every time you are the first person to grab the object, you get that card, and whoever has the most at the end of the game wins. And so this one is just a complete chaos, and I think it could really help bring everyone together and just have a really crazy fun time. And Ghost Blitz is available in the UK at the moment. You can find this one in stock online for between about £14 to £20 inclusive of postage and packing. So those are my top 6 picks of games to play with family over festive periods or over any holidays in general. Of course, I just thought I would wear the Christmas hat because Christmas is upcoming, and these are a really, really good pick in my opinion for those times. I think these ones are a really reasonable price point if you're looking to buy them yourself. Also really, really reasonable if you're looking to get them as a gift as well. And because all of these have quite streamlined rule sets, I think they are easy to get going as and when you open them up and want to play them in the moment. They are also, I think, really approachable games for young and older members of the family, so hopefully everyone will have a really good time playing. So that is it for my top 5 list. I hope you enjoyed this one today, and let me know of any other games that you personally like to play over festive periods and festive holidays. I hope you did enjoy this one today, and if you did, please consider subscribing to the channel and you will be let know of any future releases that I do. Otherwise, have a lovely rest of your day, and I will see you on the next one. Bye bye!